Dear traders, I continue right away with the generator that we have in Expert Advisor Studio. I have imported the data from my broker I have selected to use for the purpose of this course. And now I will create strategies for euro dollar on M15 chart. And also after that I will create for H1 chart. So I will leave it to euro dollar. You can see below I have different symbols that I have exported from GFD. And if you just want to use MetaTrader demo, the data that comes by default, you see that you have some symbols that you can use. Alright, so I will stick now to euro dollar on M15. And then for strategy properties, I can set the range I want to have for the stop loss and the take profit, and as well I can set the entry lots. I will leave it to 0.1, and stop loss, I prefer always to have a stop loss. If you select may use, it means that some of the strategies that will be generated will have stop loss. Some of the strategies will be without a stop loss, but I stick to always use stop loss is important in trading. And as a range, I will leave it from 10 to 100. Okay, as a type, we can use fixed stop loss or we can use trailing. We have the option to select fixed or trailing, which means again the software will decide which type of stop loss to place. I will leave it to fixed. Now for take profit, always use or may use, do not use. Again, the same logic. You choose whether you want to have it or you will leave it to the software. I will stick to always use, and again range from 10 to 100. So this means that all of the strategies that I will have in the collection, they will have stop loss and take profit within the range between 10 and 100 pips. As generator settings, I can select how long time I want the generator to be working. Normally I leave it at about 10 hours. I leave it overnight. So now is a little bit after midnight. This means it will be ready at 10:30 tomorrow morning or something like that. And then I have a couple of more options that I will not really get into deep details, but search best is how I want to organize the strategies. I want to see on the top the ones that have best profit, so I will leave it to net balance. In sample and out of sample is something very interesting that I will be using. If I leave it to in sample, this means that the generator will use all the historical data I have imported. If I use out of sample, for example, 20%, this means that the generator will use 80% of the historical data, and it will test the strategies for the last 20%. So let's say, just an example, we have 10 months of historical data and I leave it to 20% out of sample. This will mean that the generator will use the first 8 months of the historical data, and the last 2 months it will simulate trading for the strategy. So it is something like we would place this strategy 2 months ago. Okay, but now this is 20% out of the whole historical data, and in the next lectures we will see how long time exactly that is. Below we have the option to choose if we want to use preset indicators, which normally I don't. And then we have use the common acceptance criteria, which is something very important. From here we set minimum criteria for the strategies. For example, with Forex trading, I always stay above 300 count of trades, and I will even increase it now to 500. So the idea here is that we want to depend on strategies that executed many times during the backtest. We don't want to depend on a strategy that was executed just a couple of times, like 10, 20, 50 times. For this period of time that we have from the beginning of 2018, we want to have many trades that were executed for this strategy, so we will have a stable statistic. If we have a nice balance chart, it will be more reliable if this strategy was executed more times. So basically this way we will be sure that all the entry rules and exit rules are in a good combination, that this strategy had many trades and at the same time it remained profitable. Okay, I will go back to the acceptance criteria. Profit factor, I always use profit factor above 1.2. And for the beginner traders, the profit factor is the gross profit divided by the gross loss. So the profits divided by the losses. Now below we have in sample part and out of sample part. And this was an update from EA Studio which really changed the out of sample tool, and before that I was not using it a lot, but now I'm using it because these two are separated. So I can select minimum profit factor of 1.1 for the in sample part and 1.1 for the out of sample part. And what this means? This means that the generator will select strategies that had for the complete backtest minimum profit factor above 1.2, but at the same time these strategies will have profit factor above 1.1 in the in sample and in the out of sample part. Or in other words, this part, the green zone, the 20% where we are simulating trading, we will see just the strategies that are profitable, where the profits are more than the losses. So let me demonstrate it quickly to you so you will have a better idea. I will just remove the acceptance criteria. I will press on start and you can see the speed of Expert Advisor Studio. It calculates strategies extremely fast, and these are actual strategies that are calculated. Now let me stop it and you will see that already in the collection I have 28 strategies. So what you see is that in the in sample part, which is the white zone, these strategies are going up and down, as well in the out of sample part going up and down. But let's focus on the second strategy. It makes profit in the in sample part, so this is where the generator was working, and in the out of sample part it was losing. Okay, when it was backtesting this strategy for the last 20%, it shows losses. Now I don't want to see these strategies into my collection. I don't need them. I don't want to lose time with them. And by placing profit factor above 1.1 in the acceptance criteria for this zone, for the out of sample zone, I will eliminate the strategies that are actually losing in the last 20%. Okay, I hope it's clear. I will remove it now. I will go back to the generator and I will click on use the acceptance criteria, which one more time has the profit factor and the minimum count of trades. Now next to the generator you can see there is a small arrow. Below you can see the reactor, and then is the validator. The validator is used to recalculate all strategies. You can put them right over here and you can recalculate it with the new historical data, something very useful. But I will use now the reactor. So the reactor is generator, what I was showing so far, plus some optimization tools and robustness tools. One more time, I'm not getting into details about all of that. I just want to show you how I'm using it. But in this course, I will just use the Monte Carlo validation, which is very useful. So the Monte Carlo perform different tests for the strategy. With simple words, it tries to break the strategy before we use it. And I will dedicate one lecture to Monte Carlo because it's essential tool for checking the robustness of the expert advisors. So for the moment, I will just select it. I will stick to the default 20 count of trades and 80% validation tests. With very simple words, it executes different tests for the strategies with different parameters, different backtest starting bar, and things I will explain in the next lectures, but now I will just include it. And before I click on start, I will just select to use the common acceptance criteria, which I have prepared. I have the Monte Carlo, so I click on start. And now what happens is the generator starts working. You can see the speed again. It works so quickly, unbelievable for me when I first tested it. So it's generating strategies, but in the collection, I will see only the strategies that are within my strategy properties that pass the generator settings, the out of sample and the acceptance criteria, and the strategies that pass the acceptance criteria, which have 500 count of trades, 1.2 profit factor and 1.1 for the in sample and for the out of sample, these strategies will go to Monte Carlo. If Monte Carlo allows them to pass, they will come to the collection, and this is where I will see them. So you see already above 3,000, almost 4,000 strategies generated and calculated, but none of them passed the acceptance criteria and the Monte Carlo. Now I will leave this generator working for 10 hours, but while it's working, what I will do, I will start a reactor for one more time frame, and this is H1. Okay, I will go again to Expert Advisor Studio and I will prepare the very same settings that I did for the other generator. So I have some old collections, I will remove them. Let me log into my account and I go to reactor straight away. So what I have, GFD very quickly, H1, I will just make the very same settings. Now why I use M15 and H1? Simply, it's not like these are my favorite time frames, but with the time I tested so many strategies, hundreds, thousands, because I've been doing this for so long time and I have tested so many strategies during the years. What I've noticed is that with M15 and H1 I get the best results. Okay, that's personally me. If you want to test it with different time frames, if you want to trade M1, M5, you are very welcome to give it a try. You will still find some decent profitable strategies, but for me, I figured it out that using M15 and H1 works the best. So I'm just preparing now the H1 reactor and I have the Monte Carlo. I will make it to 20 count of trades and 80% validated tests and I will click on start. Now the two will be running simultaneously. This is very nice of Expert Advisor Studio because you can use it on different computers, you can use it on different browsers, and at the same time you can generate strategies for different assets and time frames. So I will leave them both and you can see already in the first one I have one strategy. Let's have a look. You can see what an equity line it has. Very nice. Profitable in the 80% in the in sample and profitable in the last 20% out of sample. I click on it, you see a simple strategy. This is what we are looking for. One entry rule, stochastic, one exit rule, Bollinger Bands, and it had 665 count of trades, which is great. Alright, now I will leave the two reactors working. And tomorrow I will continue with the results that I have. Thank you for watching and I always wish you to have a great day. Bye.